In the summer of 2013, something strange started happening in America's driveways. It wasn't loud at first. No dramatic explosions. No viral videos of engines bursting into flames on the side of I-95. It was quieter than that. A ticking sound, then a stall at a stoplight, then silence on the highway. For thousands of drivers, the moment came without warning. 1 second they were merging onto the freeway at 70 miles per hour. The next, the dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. Power vanished. Steering stiffened. Panic set in. And in that brief, terrifying silence, a question began forming across the country. How did one of the most trusted names in American cars get this so wrong? Because this wasn't some startup brand experimenting with wild engineering. This was a company built on durability, on middle-class loyalty, on families who bought the same badge generation after generation. And at the center of it all was an engine that was supposed to secure the future. Instead, it nearly erased a reputation built over half a century. To understand how it happened, you have to go back to the early 2010s, when fuel economy wasn't just a selling point. It was survival. Gas prices were hovering near $4 a gallon. The federal government was tightening emissions regulations. Corporate average fuel economy standards were climbing year after year. And in Detroit, engineers were being told the same thing in meeting rooms filled with spreadsheets and fear. Make it smaller. Make it lighter. Make it efficient. That's when the promise of direct injection and turbocharging began to feel like salvation. Across the Atlantic, European brands were already shrinking engines and adding boost. In America, the V6 and V8 still ruled highways and NASCAR tracks. But that was changing. Consumers wanted power without guilt, performance without punishment at the pump. And one company bet everything on delivering it. Hyundai Motor Company had spent decades climbing from budget obscurity to legitimate contender in the US market. By 2011, their cars were no longer punchlines. They were smart buys, affordable, stylish, backed by that famous 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. Americans were starting to trust them. That trust was fragile, and it would soon be tested by an engine called the Theta 2. The Hyundai Theta 2 wasn't supposed to be controversial. It was a modern 2.0 and 2.4-liter four-cylinder engine, direct injection, competitive horsepower, impressive fuel economy, the kind of engine designed to win comparison tests against Honda and Toyota. It went into everything. The Hyundai Sonata, the Hyundai Santa Fe, the Kia Optima, family cars, commuter cars, rental fleets, hundreds of thousands of them across North America. On paper, it was brilliant. Inside engineering facilities in Alabama and South Korea, teams worked under immense pressure. Hyundai and its sister brand, Kia Corporation, were growing fast. Market share was climbing. Dealerships were expanding. Investors were watching. Failure wasn't an option. But sometimes, failure doesn't announce itself in development labs. It hides in microscopic imperfections, in a machining process slightly out of tolerance, in debris that shouldn't be there. Years later, investigations would point to tiny metal shavings left inside engine blocks during manufacturing, contaminants that restricted oil flow, bearings that wore down prematurely, engines that, over time, began starving themselves. At first, it looked random. An engine knock here, a sudden stall there. Dealership technicians replaced short blocks under warranty. Customers were reassured. The brand's generous coverage smoothed over early complaints. But something didn't add up. Online forums began filling with stories. Drivers described identical symptoms. Ticking sounds at 60,000 miles. Seized engines before 100,000. Some reported fires, vehicles igniting after catastrophic failure. And still, the company maintained control of the narrative, until the government started asking questions. In 2015, the first major recall was announced. Nearly 500,000 vehicles in the US were affected. It was framed as a precaution, a quality improvement. But inside corporate offices, the mood shifted. Because recalls aren't just about replacing parts. They're about reputation, about headlines, about trust evaporating in real time. And this recall wasn't the end. It was the beginning. As more failures surfaced, federal investigators from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration began digging deeper. Whistleblowers came forward. One engineer alleged that the company had known about widespread defects earlier than it admitted. That accusation changed everything. When a brand built on a 10-year warranty starts looking like it hid problems, the damage isn't mechanical. It's emotional. Families who chose Hyundai for reliability suddenly felt betrayed. Social media amplified every breakdown story. Local news stations ran segments featuring frustrated owners stranded on highways. The financial impact was staggering. Over the next several years, Hyundai and Kia would recall millions of vehicles worldwide equipped with Theta 2 engines. Settlement costs ballooned into the billions. In 2020, the companies agreed to pay $210 million in penalties after U.S. regulators concluded they had delayed recalls. $210 million. That's not just a fine. That's a public scar. Meanwhile, lawsuits piled up. Class actions claimed diminished vehicle value. Owners demanded compensation for rental cars, lost wages, emotional distress. And then there were the fires. Hundreds of reported engine fires, some occurring even after recall repairs. Parking garages posted warnings. Homeowners hesitated to park in attached garages. Imagine that, buying a family sedan and wondering if it might ignite overnight. The psychological impact was impossible to quantify. By 2018, Hyundai's once-soaring reputation rankings were slipping. Consumer reports questioned reliability scores. J.D. Power studies showed dips in owner satisfaction. Competitors noticed. Toyota Motor Corporation leaned heavily into its reliability messaging. Honda Motor Company doubled down on durability narratives. American buyers, historically cautious about non-Japanese imports, began reconsidering their loyalty. And in boardrooms, executives faced a brutal reality. The very engine designed to prove Hyundai belonged among the best had instead reinforced old doubts. There's a cruel irony in automotive history. Sometimes, it's not the high-performance race engine that destroys you. It's the commuter motor, the one built for school drop-offs and grocery runs. Because volume multiplies failure. And the Theta 2 was everywhere. By some estimates, over 1.6 million vehicles in the U.S. were affected across multiple recalls. Globally, the number climbed even higher. Dealership service bays became triage centers. Engines were replaced by the thousands. Owners waited weeks for parts. Loaner car fleets ran dry. Every replacement cost money. Every news article cost trust. But here's the question that lingers. Was it purely manufacturing error? Or was it pressure? In the early 2010s, Hyundai was chasing giants, trying to prove that a South Korean automaker could dominate American roads. Growth was rapid. Production ramped up. Factories worked at enormous scale. In that race for legitimacy, did something slip? Internal documents later revealed debates about recall scope, about whether failures were isolated or systemic, about how quickly to notify regulators. Those conversations may never be fully public, but the consequences were. Stock prices wobbled. Brand perception surveys dipped. Competitors capitalized. And yet, Hyundai didn't collapse. That's what makes this story complicated. They extended warranties, offered lifetime engine coverage for some affected vehicles, invested billions into quality control reforms, launched new engines, even pushed aggressively into electric vehicles, attempting to redefine their image for a new era. Today, many consumers view Hyundai differently than they did in 2015. New models win awards. EV platforms generate praise. But scars don't vanish. Ask any longtime car enthusiast at a Cars and Coffee in Ohio or California about Theta 2, and you'll see the reaction. A raised eyebrow. A cautionary tone. In American car culture, reputation travels fast. It's why people still debate the reliability of certain 80s GM diesels. Why the words Ford Pinto still spark controversy decades later. One engine can echo for generations. The Theta 2 didn't just cost Hyundai billions of dollars. It cost them something harder to measure. Trust. Because when an engine fails, it's not just metal breaking. It's a promise breaking. The promise that your family will get home safely. The promise that your $25,000 investment won't turn into a legal battle. The promise behind that 10-year warranty slogan. And here's the part that still unsettles industry insiders. Even after the recalls, even after the fines, reports of engine fires continued sporadically. Investigations remained open for years. New software updates were issued to detect bearing wear early. But software can't erase memory. So what really destroyed the reputation? Was it the defect itself? Or the delay? Because history suggests consumers can forgive mistakes. What they struggle to forgive is hesitation. In the hyper-competitive American market, where brand loyalty runs deep and alternatives sit just across the street, perception becomes reality. And the perception, for a critical stretch of years, was that Hyundai had stumbled when it mattered most. Yet the company survives. In fact, it thrives in many segments today, which raises a haunting possibility. What if the engine didn't destroy the brand completely? What if it reshaped it, forced it to become more cautious, more transparent, more aggressive in quality control? Sometimes corporate disasters become turning points, painful, expensive lessons that redefine culture. But that doesn't erase the drivers stranded on highways in 2014. It doesn't erase the class action plaintiffs. It doesn't erase the $210 million fine. And it certainly doesn't erase the online archives filled with ticking engine videos. Somewhere in America tonight, a 2013 Sonata still runs quietly. Its owner might never experience a problem. The replacement engine installed years ago humming reliably. But for others, the memory lingers. A sudden loss of power. A tow truck ride home. A question asked in frustration. How did this happen? In the end, the most powerful machines in the world aren't the ones with the most horsepower. They're the ones people believe in. And when belief cracks, even slightly, it changes everything. The Theta 2 was just metal, pistons, oil passages. But it carried the weight of a company's ambition. And when it faltered, so did the narrative Hyundai had worked decades to build. The company says it has learned. That processes are stronger. That quality control is tighter than ever. Maybe that's true. But history leaves fingerprints. And somewhere deep inside corporate archives, in emails, meeting notes, engineering reports, lies the full story of what executives knew and when they knew it. That story hasn't fully surfaced. Not yet. Because sometimes, the real fallout isn't the engine that failed. It's the silence that followed. And the question that still hangs in the air, years later. If the pressure to grow that fast hadn't existed, would that motor have ever destroyed anything at all?